Hello, and happy World Circus Day. I'm Bruce Hawley, president of the Circus Historical Society, and welcome to Circus History Live. Circus History Live is produced monthly by the CHS. Recordings of previous programs are available on the CHS YouTube channel. In celebration of World Circus Day, our guest for today's program is international circus arts historian and author Dominique Jando. And now, without further ado, here's the host of Circus History Live, CHS Vice President Chris Berry. Chris?
Thanks so much, Bruce. I am so excited about today's episode of Circus History Live because of the person that we're talking to. When we were deciding who would be a good one on World Circus Day, a good interview subject, there was only one person that I could think of, and that was Dominique Jando. Dominic, thanks for joining us. I really think that you're going to be a terrific guest today because we can talk not only about the situation worldwide in the circus world, but also specifically a little bit more about you because you're such an interesting person. So welcome to Circus History Live.
It's my pleasure.
A lot of us realize, but I just want to make sure that everyone knows that we are all very fortunate to have you with Circopedia. Circopedia is probably the foremost place on the internet where you can find out information about circus history. And I think that, why don't you tell us how that all started? I understand it was a Big Apple project to start with.
Yes, it was. It's an interesting story because I left the Big Apple Circus at some point, as you may know, and one of the board members, who was Mary-Jane Brock, wanted me to keep involved in the Big Apple Circus. She didn't like the fact that I left. And she was trying to find a project which could involve me still in the affairs of the Big Apple Circus. And she had a major donor who was Donald Rubin, who wanted to participate and give money to the Big Apple Circus if there was a project which was virtual, which means using the internet and so forth. So she asked me if I had an idea, and I said we can do a encyclopedia of the circus online, for instance. We can put that. I said, that's fine. And Donald Rubin gave money to do that, and I did that with some technical help and his money. And it's how it started, and then it grew very quickly, and eventually, it was always from the beginning. The idea was at some point it would leave the Big Apple Circus and continue a life of its own, which it did, but not in the way we thought. It did because the Big Apple Circus, as it was, the original, closed its door, and I kept it alive all this time, and now it has become enormous. It's very difficult to stop.
Thousands of people I know a month look at your site. But I want to talk specifically now about the circus worldwide today. We're fortunate, as I mentioned earlier, that you're someone who really keeps up with what's going on around the world. In your opinion, tell me, what is the state of circus today?
It depends where and how, and it's very different. For instance, here in America, there is an interesting rebirth which comes with circus families, and notably a Latino circus family. And the thing is, after the pandemic, and also with the interdiction in many places to show animal acts, some circus had a hard time to survive and close their doors. So there is certainly less circus, at least in Western Europe and America, and also in South America, than it was before. But the good solid ones have survived, and in the US, actually, there are the good one, Vasquez, Vargas, and circuses like this. Ringling, I don't know, but I know they are not doing bad at all. In Europe, also, there is a lot less circuses than there were, but they are doing pretty well. The one who are surviving, and the quality is very high. The place where it's really thriving right now, it's Russia, which is nothing new.
So I know you have recently returned from Russia. Tell me about what you saw there when you were in Moscow.
What I see, it's quite regular because I go there practically every year. But you know, for instance, you look at Moscow, you still have two circuses: the Bolshoi Circus on Lenin Hill, and the old Circus Nikulin and Tsvetnoy Boulevard, which is the original Moscow Circus. They are going to build a third one in the city and renovate the Bolshoi Circus, which was built in 72 and is not in a very good condition for its infrastructure. So it's going pretty well. They have renovated the Circus Siniseli in Leningrad, in St. Petersburg. There are still 60 circus buildings in Russia. And what you see there, it's quite amazing. I mean, the show we saw, this picture that you see on your screen is at the Bolshoi Circus, which is very innovative and not always the right direction in my thinking, but pretty good. And the shows you can see there are really mind-blowing. I mean, it's nothing compared to what we can see here. And in terms of production values, in terms of quality of the acts, you have still those enormous troupes, which are totally spectacular. The circuses are full. And when you speak of the Bolshoi Circus you see here, it's a circus which has 3,500 seats. And even if they can reduce the house a little bit with a system of curtains in the height of the circus, but even if they do that, it's still a circus which has 2,000 some seats. Nikulin is the same; it's 2,000 some. So it's going pretty well, and those circuses that's different.
Roncalli, yeah. We'll come
Yeah,
back to that.
but I finished with the Russian. Those circuses are also equipped in a way which is, for instance, both Bolshoi and Nikulin, and in Petersburg, Chiniseli and elsewhere, they have their own workshop. They do their costume, they do their set, they do their props, they build their equipment. Those are enormous company with a lot of employees, and they are thriving. So they are helped by the Ministry of Culture. In the case of Nikulin and Bolshoi, they are also helped by the city of Moscow. Nikulin is an independent circus. The Bolshoi is part of the city of Moscow now. So they are not left to their own future. They are helped and they are thriving. In China, it's also pretty good, but the Chinese are looking for exportation more than developing the acrobatic theater in their own country, although it's going well. But for instance, the big Chinese shows are in places like Chimelong in Nanjing, which is this enormous outdoor circus, which is a tourist place. It's an attraction park with zoos and things like that. which is quite amazing to see because they have a night zoo and a day zoo, which are fully staffed with animals, and they are not the same animals. I mean, they are, you know, you have 10 giraffes in one and 10 giraffes in the other.
Amazing.
It's quite amazing. But it's done for tourism, their circus show. What they do mostly, it's exporting circus acts, whereas in Russia, it's really for the Russian audience.
Especially now with the sanctions,
Yeah,
we were, you know, when
they
we're recording this in April of 2025, and there are sanctions against the Russians that do not allow them to send acts into the West at this
no, they
point.
can send act. Actually, they are beginning to reappear in Europe because the circus population in Europe is not very happy of this isolation of Russia because it's, you know, circus is a country, or Jerome Medrano said, circus is a religion, and circus people don't like to be annoyed by politicians.
That is for sure. So as you move across Europe right now, we talked about Russia, you talked about China a little bit. Obviously, long tradition of circuses in France that are in permanent buildings, although Cirque de Ville, which we see behind you right there, the beautiful
Yeah.
Cirque de Ville
Welcome to
auditorium.
the festival.
Yes, those permanent buildings, they do see circus as a true art form in places like Paris and Moscow.
Yes, of course, it's an art form. It's part of the culture. Doesn't mean that I mean, in Europe, in France, doesn't mean that the Ministry of Culture understand exactly what it is, but there is a support, and there's also support, for instance, for Alexis Grus in Paris, and in the summer is in, I don't remember when, southwest of France, is also supported by the municipality there. So there is a support, but mostly it's not like nothing compared with what they get in Russia, for instance, or in China, for that matter. But there is, you know, there is a culture which is very different. We are with Grus in Paris. So this show, for instance, is very interesting because it's Alexis Grus, the late Alexis Grus show, but it's family show, which is called Les Folies Grus. This is Alexis, who passed away not long ago, and with whom I learned circus, actually. Les Folies Grus, for instance, is a show which is extremely successful. They are 6 months in Paris. You can have a dinner before the show and then see the show, which is 1 hour and a half or something without intermission. And the dinner, you have also acts that are performing during dinner. And the show is absolutely magnificent with the specialty of the Grus family. It's the 50 horses that are in the stables, about half of them participating in the show, the other half being trained for the show next year. So it's, you know, speaking of circus with animals, you go to Grus to see horses. You see also acrobats and everything, but everybody is an equestrian in the family. And the success comes from that in great part. The other part is that Alexis and his family are part of the Parisian fabric now. That the stables of Grus with the 50 boxes, individual boxes for each and every one of the horses. So, and also there is something interesting. Krone, who is getting on tour right now, just finished the season at the Kronenbau in Munich, which is their building there. which has been practically sold out for the 3 months they did the season there. And they are going with a cathedral tent. It's, those big tent like Vasquez, where the enormous thing and with everything under the same canvas. And Krone still travel with also, I don't know, 20, 30 horses. And Alex Lacey and his cats, and his son also has another cat act. So and they are selling out. So it's it's hard to tell the Krone to do otherwise. Krone is in Germany. It's the circus.
So go ahead.
No, continue.
So when you take a look at those Eastern or when the European circuses and animals that you mentioned a moment ago, China, you said, they have this enormous menagerie that's associated with it. Because of political reasons, primarily here in the United States, we do not see a whole lot of animals anymore in circuses. Certainly in traveling circuses, it's very difficult. What's going on in Europe right now with the
It's difficult. It's there is a European legislation would say that circus and circus with animal is part of the European culture and fabric. That said, you have of course municipalities who block and think, but not as many as here, and that is very political. The audience, for certain, he doesn't want that. The audience wants to see the circus they know. It's not necessarily on the animals, but Bruce is selling out in a tent which has about 2,500 seats with the horses, and it's why he's selling out. So it's difficult because it's a question of where you do that or don't do that. The cities, some cities, they don't even want to see a circus. I mean, those people from PETA and other had just brought back the circus people like the vagabonds of the old times, which we had succeeded in erasing that.
Yes.
And they have recreated that. So for some people, circus is they are going to steal the chicken and things like that. But it's not the mentality of the audience. And I have a friend with Raoul Gibault. Raoul Gibault is the owner of Cirque Medrano, the itinerant Cirque Medrano in France. And he has other shows, especially for Christmas and things like this. He had 4 or 5 circus tents. And at some point, he was touring 7 circuses in France. And
Amazing.
he had, because of that, in winter quarters, he had about 300 animals. And Raoul is very smart. He's not from the circus. He's a guy. He was a circus enthusiast before, and he thought, and he's well introduced in the political circles, so he know what happens. But when that became during the pandemic and thing, and he realized that he had those hundreds of animals on his hands, and he could be forbidden to use them. So he gets rid of all the animals. He sold them slowly but surely in the zoos and other circuses, and decided to go without animals, but keeping in mind that he told me, it will come back. I know it will come back. So what I do is to keep a low profile with that. So my name is still very popular where it is popular, including in places where they don't like animals. I mean, the municipalities and things like that. But it will come back, and I am ready. And he has a good perception. He knows his audience. He knows the politicians, and he had a good feeling of that.
You and I have spoken in the past about how the circus has evolved. It's always evolved from the very beginning, but especially over the past 10 or 15 years, we've seen things that have really been monumental in a lot of ways. You talked about animals a little bit. I'm going to put up a photo. This is from Roncalli, actually, a photo of the clowns that are on Roncalli. We've also seen a change really in the way that clowns are presented. Is that different in Europe than it is in America right now?
It has always been different in Europe. This, for instance, is extremely classical in Europe. It's nothing contemporary. It's totally classical. In Europe, I was a clown in Europe, so I have a little memories of that. Clowns are usually the stars of the show, especially at Roncalli, because Bernard Paul loves clowns, and he was a clown himself. But clowns speak, clowns play music, clowns stay 10 minutes, 15 minutes in the ring, sometimes more if they are really famous. We have seen in America what a European clown is with David Larible, which is very European. It's not so much a visual character than it is a comic character. And because of the one-ring format in Europe, or because of the three-ring format, which is uniquely American, clowns have lost in America all their humanity. Now we go back to the one-ring format, and you need clown that you can relate to in a very direct way, not from far away, but from close by. And so the clowning is shifting to the European style quite normally. And the guy I gave a Circopedia Award not long ago at American Circus Fest, he's Spanish and he's a European clown, and he plays the way European clowns play, or South American clowns for that matter. And it works now on a one-ring format. Just having 50 clowns getting out of a car on the one-ring format, it doesn't make any sense. It's totally out of context.
I think this is
that's him, Mr. Rampin, and you see also his character is very simple. I mean, it's not outrageous or whatever. So that's what we are beginning to see.
but he's clearly a clown. I think anybody who
absolutely
saw him would realize that he was providing comedy.
No, he is a clown. I mean, for me, it's clowns have one thing that characterizes them. They are funny. If they are not funny, I don't care what makeup they have or big shoes or whatever you want. They are not clowns.
So we're gonna bounce around here a little bit. I want to share something with the folks who are watching right now. Now this is a poster, but this is kind of a unique poster, I know. Tell us a little bit about why that is and why it's important to you.
It's important to me because those two guys who are Sergio, the old, the people who used to go to the Monte Carlo Festival in the old days, know well. It was the ringmaster of Monte Carlo for years. So the white-faced clown here is Sergio, and the other one is Dominique Dominique, who has written, I don't know, 50 books on circus history, but in French. Those were my partners, and originally we were a trio.
And there were originally three faces there, right?
Yes, and I went to my military service when the contract with the Cirque de Montmartre came. So I designed the poster, and the big red thing that you see there, the background, the red background, is there actually to hide the third face. Yeah, and it's a little bit not in the right order. I mean, the face of Dominique is a bit too much center because it's covering, but that was my partners. That were my
Well,
partners.
let's talk about you a little bit. You know, we think of you obviously because of the tremendous background that you have on circus history all over the world, founding the Circopedia, all of the thousands of people who check that on a monthly basis. But tell me about you. Tell me about how you got interested in the circus and how you became a performer, a manager, and then sort of a consultant in a lot of ways.
Uh, it's it's a long story, but because it started very very early. Uh, I'm trying to make it short. Uh, I am from a family which has absolutely nothing to do with the circus, although they have. My father was a movie producer, and my grandfather was a lawyer. He was a lawyer, he was a politician in Angoulême, which is in the southwest of France. Um, and he was also a Freemason. He was a high ranking Freemason. And one day, a very, very famous clown in Europe who was Little Walter, with the guy that Grock copied to do his act. And he was a very famous clown, and he had his own circus at some point. Landed in Angoulême with this circus, I think, already at the time, and needed a lawyer. And of course, like all the important people in the circus in Europe and also in America, starting with John Bill Ricketts, Walter was a Freemason. So he went to the lodge and he said, "Do you know a lawyer?" So, yeah, this guy there. And so he went to my grandfather, and somehow they become lifelong friends. And Walter had a son, who was also a very famous clown after that, who I have known very well, Joe Walter, also called Little Walter after that, and who was a childhood friend of my father. So my father had been backstage in circus quite early in his life, playing around and meeting circus people. And then, since I was raised in Paris we had two circuses when I was a teenager and a kid, which were the Cirque d'Hiver and Medrano. And those circuses changed their program every month, which means that Parisian used to go to the circus the same way you would go to the theater to see a play or to see a new show or to see a famous performer who was performing at Medrano or the Cirque d'Hiver. And so it was sort of a regular outing. The circus was there. You didn't wait for the circus to come to go to the circus. It was there all the time. And my father was invited at all the opening night at Medrano because of his job, because he was in show business and so like that. And when the show was interesting, he took me. So very little, I think first time I went to the circus, I must have been 5 years old or something, or even younger than that. So I have blurry memories of that, but it's a place where I have always felt comfortable because it was a thing we did regularly. And also because my father, instead of saying, "Oh, you are going to see the little pony," the stupid thing you say to the children, my father said, this aerial act is better than the one you saw last time because this or that. And he also took me to see in Medrano Buster Keaton, well, in 57, I think. Which is my first very precise memory of the circus.
Of course, the great vaudevillian and silent film star Buster
Yeah.
Keaton
uh,
went over to Paris and was at
and he
Circus
had an
Medrano.
enormous success. He came 3 times to Medrano, and I mean, it was very successful each time, and I remember that. But the fact is that very young, I was introduced to the circus as something serious. I mean, something which is an art form, and you have to pay attention to what you are watching. And after that, when I was a teenager, I used to go to the circus every week, to one or the other. So I saw a lot of acts, and of course, I became interested to the history of all that. And the Club du Cirque in France had, which the Circus Fan Association, if you will, has a review, Le Cirque dans l'Univers, which was written by some of the great circus historians of the time. I started reading that, and I started being interested in what happened before me in that world, and then I continued reading, finding things, and in 60s, early 60s, or yeah, in 1960 probably, I joined in Medrano a thing which was called the Club Medrano, Club des Amis de Medrano, which was a sort of embryo of a circus school. So you could go there and be taught on Wednesday, Saturday, and Sunday morning by some of the performers who were there, and some performers who were also there just to teach. And I was always fascinated by clowns. Two things that fascinated me, it was clowns and cats, big cats. And I was fascinated by clowns, and I met my partners there, and we started working, and we were coached by very famous clowns. Little Walter was one, Louis Maïs, Alex, they were very famous person who coached us, not try to explain us how to be funny, but how to be performers, which is important, because funny you are not.
Right.
Nobody
Yeah,
can do that for
just
you.
because you put on the makeup doesn't make you.
It's not enough.
Wow.
And we discovered that very quickly, because we had a good sense of humor and we loved clown and good clowning. But I did that for about 7 years. And for 3 years, we flopped monumentally, and we learned how to become clowns through our flops. It's how you learn.
One of the things that I think a lot of people may not realize is what a tremendous artist you are too. And so I want to share some of the posters that you have created. Tell me about this one here. It says 1975. This is
That's Jean Richard. It's when Jean Richard Jean Richard was a very famous actor in France, who at the end had 4 circuses, and were the most popular, were the best circuses in France. And he bought the Cirque Pinder after some years. First it was the Cirque Jean Richard, then the Cirque Pinder Jean Richard, and later on a third one, the Nouveau Cirque Jean Richard, and then the Nouvel Hippodrome Le Pantin. And Jean Richard was a very, very famous actor on movies and television. He was also a comedian. And he was an amateur cat trainer, and and he was a friend of my father, and I was lucky to know him very well, and because I had already done posters for Grus when I worked with him for 10 years, he asked me to make poster, and his organization asked me to design poster for them. That's a poster I did for Alexis, for Grus. And so I did a bunch of posters for Jean Richard, Pinder Jean Richard. One is revered by all the circus fans in France. It's I don't think you have it on slide, but it's it's a poster that every collector wants to have or have, and it's the iconic poster. It was the first I did for Jean Richard. I had done a bunch for it. I like it, but fans love it. It's the ultimate poster because the circus is on the seashore and you see the sea. It reminds of the holiday or the vacation in the summer, and all the people who have known this circus, Jean Richard, and this poster made them dream, and it has become something. I mean, it's reproduced in books and
Then you moved to the United States and you spent
yeah.
20 years at the Big Apple Circus, which is amazing. I'll start off here a little bit with a poster design that you had for Big Apple. Of course, Barry Lubin, the star of the show at the time, Grandma. Um, but tell me how that was coming over to this new concept of an American circus, the Big Apple Circus, after being
The
in
Big
Europe.
Apple. I met. Uh, I'm one of the founding members of the Paris Festival, Festival Mondial du Cirque de Demain, which still exists. And because, I mean, it's a long story, but I was on the board and everything. And I met Paul and Judith Friedlander, who was the executive director of the Big Apple Circus at the time, who was really at the very beginning in Paris. He came to Paris to see the festival. He brought the Backstreet Flyers, who were a tumbling act who got gold. And we met there, and Judith imported me to America because I had managed a circus school, and there was a circus school at the Big Apple Circus who disappeared very quickly because the Big Apple Circus was growing so fast. There was no time to take care of the school. So eventually I became Paul's right arm, and I went into the artistic department. But the Big Apple Circus came from also the visit and the work of Paul and Michael, Paul Binder, Michael Christensen, who worked at the Nouveau Cirque de Paris of Annie Fratellini, which is the same time, same period when we created the Cirque à l'Ancienne with Grus, and they were the competitive school, the competition school, the two very first school in the Western Hemisphere were competing. And they discovered the one-ring circus. They discovered the warmth of it and the artistry of it, because as Alexis was very creative, very atmospheric, if you will, so was Annie Fratellini. And his thing was, why don't we do that in America? That's the kind of circus that people would love. And he was at the right time in New York to do that. At the same time, the Pickle Family Circus was appearing in San Francisco, and Circus Oz, or the prefiguration of Circus Oz in Australia, all that on the same year. So it was a moment that has to be taken, and it's what happened. And my participation there was, I guess, interesting for the Big Apple Circus because I came from Grus. I had this experience. I had the one ring. I mean, I came also from Medrano, and Medrano was the best circus that ever was, the most creative, long before everybody. He was ahead of his time, Jérôme Medrano, in an incredible way.
Well, Renoir even did, paintings of Cirque Madrano.
Yeah, I mean that was before him, before Jérôme, but because Medrano had an atmosphere which is, I mean, for me, it's such a terrible that this circus has been destroyed, because it was absolutely incredible. So I had this experience of that style of circus, and so I was relatively useful there because I could bring this knowledge and thing. And the Big Apple Circus ended to be very European. You know, the last artistic director of Big Apple Circus was Guillaume Dufresnoy, who was French too. Uh,
You
it
designed this logo too, right, for the marquee?
The marquee, yes, I designed that with my
Yeah.
little hands. And it's very Roncallian, as you can see. The fence, that was um, Brian, who was the general manager who designed designed the fence after Roncalli. But we wanted to create this atmosphere, and it worked. I mean, it really worked. It was considered the Tiffany of American circus at the time, and which was incredible. It's also because of those international connection. The Big Apple Circus became very, very famous in Europe and even in Russia. And that's Vanessa and
Vanessa and
Bob.
Buckles Woodcock. Yeah.
And it was the circus where people wanted to work until the end of the nonprofit was one. And I remember when the circus closed, the nonprofit Big Apple Circus closed and was sold. I went to Moscow, and you had Russian people who came to me and say, "What happened? What happened? Why that?" It's it was for abroad. It was such a name, such an image, such a place where performers wanted to be, like Knie or Roncalli or the Big Apple Circus. That were the dreams.
So one of the people who you did end up staying with is your lovely wife, Elena Panova. And I mean, she was a wonderful performer, and even today, you're very actively involved with her and her students, right?
Yeah, I've not so much now, but I have been for a good amount of years. I am on the board of Circus Center San Francisco, where she teach, and with her for about 6 years, I think, we run a professional aerial program at the school, which was very successful. That's one of the class of one of those years. Most of them are professionals today. They stayed there 2 or 3 years, according to the difficulty of what we were trying to do. It was Russian-style school with all what you do in Russian school, in Moscow Circus School, which means ballet, theater, things as stupid how to eat and what to eat, how to avoid injuring yourself. And they worked 5 days a week, 5 or 6 days a week, every week. And that was hard work, and about 5 to 6 hours a day. And that's the way you have to do it. And they were very good teachers there. I mean, Elena was one of them, and there were others because Elena doesn't do everything. But whatever the specialty, they eventually, I would say 80% of them over the years have become professional. They work mostly in Europe. They came from practically all over, even from Montreal. We had Canadian students there from Quebec, from French Canada, when you think that they can go to the circus schools in Montreal, but they came there on the name of Elena in part. And I don't know why, but the word of mouth was there. We have people from Japan, students from Japan, from South America, from everywhere. And that was quite successful. Unfortunately, doing a circus school in America, it's a very everywhere. It's a very expensive proposition, and in Europe, the great circus schools all have subsidies. The major ones from the state, and the other one from the region or the city where they are, if they are recreational. Because as opposed to ballet, for instance, in a ballet class, you can put 20 students and one teacher, and it will be efficient. In the circus, you have one student and one main teacher. Group class are there are a bunch of them, but few. The main work is done one-to-one. So if you have in a promotion about 10 students, you will have to have at some point 10 teachers to work with only one student. It's very difficult to do without help, to do it well without help.
You know, one of the things that we've talked about, you and I have talked about, is the training of acts. We talked about circus schools a little bit, the big troops that they still exist, don't they? We just don't see a lot of them in the United States.
Yeah, they are in Russia. You have plenty. I mean, you see them, and in China, of course, but you see them if you go to Monte Carlo, or if you go to see shows in Europe, especially on the Christmas show when they have big budget and they bring over troop from even from Russia again, still, but it's it's always the same. It's if you are Krone and you have 4,000 seats in your tent and you are successful, you can afford a troupe. And actually, we had troupe at the Ligabro Circus, and but it's you had to have a place to put them together, and we didn't put them in a hotel. We had those huge trailers with the compartments, comfortable compartments, not a
Yeah,
sleep.
the bunkhouse, the bunk bed.
Yeah.
So you know, you mentioned earlier the Latin influence in American circus today, and certainly you know, something like Circus Vasquez, which has had tremendous success recently. You know, it's a family. They seem to you know, all take a part in it. How important is it? This is a shot of the Vasquez
And
big
that's
top
an
10.
example of a cathedral tent. It's what Krone has now.
Yes, and most of these, a lot of these made by Canobio, right?
No, this one actually came from Mexico, I think.
Oh, it did.
Yeah.
But this is the Vasquez tent, as you can see, you know, much larger than a lot of the very small one ring circuses, obviously still considerably smaller than, you know, the big ringling shows that we used to see. I didn't see, but they had back in the 50s and so forth. But the Mexican influence, you know, Vasquez has decided that they're not just going after the Latin audience now. They're going after a mainstream American audience, and they are having tremendous success doing that. So I've got to think that you know, that there is
They
definitely
are they,
something
they
there.
are opening to a larger audience because they know that they need to do that. But the thing about Vasquez, of course, the Latino audience knows that kind of circus. Vargas is the same as a huge Latino audience. They are familiar with it, and it's an easy target in terms of marketing for them because they know that people understand what it is and will come. But for me, what is interesting in the case of Vasquez, Vargas, Caballeros, and some other, is that these are families, and it's the circus who actually have survived in Europe are families, as a family circus. Krone can be a very big whatever, but it's a family circus. The Tony, the Grus, Arlette Grus, they're all family circus because they can make the balance between the business and the artistry. They can provide part of the artistry, and if not all, they understand what is needed. And they know that they are not going to be billionaires at the end of the process, but it's in their blood, it's their lives. And they do it again because circus is a country and circus is a religion. There is, in the old days in America, for many reasons, the fact that it was a country of immigrants, and it was a very large country and everything, uh, circus became very early, very, very popular, and became a very good business proposition that P.T. Barnum understood very well. And so it evolved in a business, and not surprisingly, the only one who really survived, including the Great Depression, was Ringling, because the Ringling brothers were performers. So they were in tradition in the family, that it was not just business, it went a little bit beyond that. Although for the same reason, they couldn't continue the way they had done before, because after the war, the economic situation was not the same anymore. So the idea of circus as a business completely fell apart, and they all disappeared one after the other as business, but the families were able to continue and taking over. And you show pictures of the poemas, which is the Hannafords. The Hannaford is a circus family too, and they are still here. And you see that everywhere, even in Russia, which is funny because you have this fabulous circus school who has created some of the greatest performers ever. And the generation today in Russia,
Tommy Hannaford poema here, doing the act that was first made famous by, I guess, his great uncle.
Great granduncle, yeah,
Oh, yeah.
and great grandfather too. But it's even in Russia, the new generation of performers and fabulous performers. I don't speak of survivors there. I speak of the people who really want to get there. They are from families. It's the circus families who keep the Russian circus well and alive. And the two
This is
most,
a
the most,
Russian equestrian act there at the Bolshoi in Moscow, right?
yeah. And wait a minute, I look at the faces. They're
Obviously a big writing act.
usually the Zapashny, who are the director of the Bolshoi Circus, sometimes are in this act. And the Zapashny brothers are also from a circus dynasty in Russia, the same as Maxim Nikulin, the director of Circus Nikulin in Moscow, with the son of Yuri Nikulin, who was the greatest clown Russia ever had, and probably the greatest circus star Russia ever had, because Yuri was also a movie star. And he did both together. He never let one for the other. And now it's his sons who are in charge of Circus Nikulin in Moscow, but they have been brought up within the circus world, the circus families.
Australia has a long tradition of circus also. This is a circus called Circus Royale in Australia. Again, people definitely come out, but they have the same challenges for animals that we have here in the United States.
Yeah, it's which is a pity, because circus started with horses. So, but that again, I trust Raoul Gibault, my friend of Cirque Medrano. It will come back, and it's coming back. The Grus are the best example of that. Who would think that it's a good thing to have 50 horses in your stables?
It's pretty amazing, isn't it?
Yeah.
So when you look to the circus of the future, like you said, probably not in the United States, but in Europe, we're seeing animals coming back. What else do you see as sort of trends that are happening right now in the circus?
But you know, I'm always very careful about speaking of the future of the circus because uh, when Big Apple Circus came, nobody thought that wandering circus would be the norm in America. When Cirque du Soleil came, nobody saw it coming. Uh, and it's always like this. You never know exactly where it is. But what I can see today, for instance, if you go to take Greece, it's big. Greece is a big circus, but it's done by one single family. And what works, it's the connection of the people with that family. It's the same with Knie in Switzerland. Knie is the royal family of Switzerland. They don't have a royal family, so they have the Knies. And I don't think you can remain a Swiss citizen if you don't go to see Knie once a year. Uh, it's and so there is the connection, the human connection, which is very, very important to the survival of the circus. And when you see, I don't remember which Vasquez speak to the audience at the end of the show, he makes this connection. He makes from his family to the audience this very personal connection. The most successful circus in England right now, I say in England because they just visit England, the south of England to be precise, it's uh, Gifford Circus.
Oh, Gifford Circuit, yes.
Which is a small circus, beautifully done, with a wonderful atmosphere, production values, and everything. And they are starting their tour now, and the tickets are on sale everywhere. And people are, I know because my children and grandchildren live in England, so I know that my daughter is buying her tickets now for 3 months ahead or something like that, because you don't miss Giffords.
Very interesting.
And it's this very human, intimate, warm circus. And the same here in San Francisco with Circus Bella. It's, like was a Pickle Family Circus before.
Mhm.
Because people need inherently this it has to be human. It has to be 100% human, because it's for me, my philosophy of the circus, it's not just a show with acts and things like that, and certainly not a place for cotton candy and all the surrounding, but it's a ritual of survival. You see extraordinary things done by normal people, which actually are not normal. They are extraordinary people. I don't like people who say, oh, a circus is extraordinary thing done by ordinary people. No, they are extraordinary people. But it's what it is, and people don't, they know it or they don't know it, but they need to see that. They need somebody to do 4 revolution in the air and caught the hand of the catcher with a smile. And
we're fortunate we can still see that today in a lot of places.
And it's the same way they need to see a guy in the middle of 15 tigers and being beautiful, like another
Alex
friend,
Lacey,
or Lacey, for instance, or Idrosha Pavlenko, who were there with this little baton of orchestra conductor with 17 tigers in the middle, in tails. And it's just a moment of extraordinary beauty. I mean, if you are close, you see that he's sweating actually, but from the third row, you don't see that, and you see this guy absolutely, and this is magical. This is that's life. That's a real life, not the virtual life. It's the real thing, and people need that. So when that is understood, and it has to be beautiful too. That's something which is not always understood with the new circus movement, things like that. It has to be heartwarming. You have to be, you get out of there and you must leave the place with a smile on your face and ready to survive. As I don't remember who said that, Hemingway, I think. It's so the thing is, you have to understand why you do circus. Families know, it's not only because it's family. It's again, it's a religion. They know why they have to continue, and those who don't know leave, and they have left.
Well,
But
fortunately, there are plenty of people out there who are still committed to it. The circus lives in a lot of places, in tents, in theaters, in permanent buildings. Dominique Jando, thank you again for joining us on World Circus Day 2025. I think it's been a very interesting discussion about what's happening in the circus around the world and also learn a little bit more about you. I want to thank you again for Circopedia. If you haven't checked out Circopedia, it's a rabbit hole that once you go down it, you'll be learning so much. Thanks to our friend Dominique Jando. Bruce?
thank you very much.
Dominique, thank you so much. Thank you for taking us around the world on Circus Day, World Circus Day. It was a perfect program, perfect guest to give us a beautiful view of what's happening around the world. Thank you so much. I'd also like to thank Chris Berry for being our host. And behind the scenes, Anya Norris, who does our technical recordings and puts this program on YouTube, which you can see on Monday. And of course, I'd like to thank all of you for attending our programs. We've done almost 50 of these, I think. And Chris and I were talking about this before. It's really an honor to be able to share this history with you in a live format like this. And if you're not already a CHS member, please consider joining us at circushistory.org. We publish a beautiful journal, The Bandwagon, which is just arriving on people's mailboxes this week. Chris will show them a copy. There you go. Yes, this one features a big article on Lottie Brun, who was a famous juggler. There she is in the back with her brother Francis. But if you like circus history and you really want to get into this whole environment and culture and art form, as Dominique eloquently explained tonight, please consider joining us. We have a convention coming up in October. It's going to be in Las Vegas. We haven't been west with this group in quite a while, so we're looking forward to being closer to our friends in California and Arizona and the West. So it's October 22nd through 25th in Las Vegas. Check our website, circushistory.org, for more details. Dominique, any last words?
Well, circus is a religion. It's for no. My last word. It's circus brought me so much, and it really has been my life for the past 60 some years. I really started getting completely in it when I was 18, so 62 years, something like that. And it's if you really, it's a fascinating history because it's the Circus Historical Society there. And when you start digging, especially within the families, and you start to understand where they come from, it's just the most fascinating world and the most I don't know. I cannot describe.
It's magic. It's magical. It's magic.
Yeah, I've been in the theater. I have been in the movies. My father was a movie producer. I've worked in the theater, and I've worked with actors, and I've known great actors, but nothing like circus people. Believe me, nothing.
Well, thank you. And by the way, Dominique is a member of the Circus Historical Society.
He is.
And has been for
Proud
many
member.
years, many proud member for many years. And we thank you for your membership. Chris,
See you down the road.
good night, everyone. See you down the road. Hope to see you in Las Vegas. Happy World Circus Day.